Backing music was used illegally.
That XP was remarkable, unremarkable. He made the album to lift himself up and pull him out of the quagmire. Ain't we all, man? Ain't we all, brother?
I went on a stag do to London the other year.
Very special guest, XP from Flame Griller, the West Yorkshire rap crew. He's a top bloke. Buy everything he does.
The WYcast is made possible by people going on the XP homepage, www.exp.uk, and buying my albums on vinyl and CD and getting merch as well. So big thanks to everyone who has, and if you enjoy these podcasts, please consider helping out by going and buying some. Welcome to the WYcast Series 4. Big up if you've been here before. But if you've not, then you've missed a lot, and I've quickly got to get you up to speed for sure. So I'm XP, or people call me Ben, hip-hop musician based in Leeds, who's being more intent to promote the scene full of dope MCs, dope producers, dope people whose hopes and dreams involve being part of hip-hop. Might be the love of their life, they might do it just on the side, or go whole hog and it's a company vibe. We're just looking to push hip-hop in West Yorkshire, WY, so with a GoPro and a couple of mics, a Zoom recorder, some seats and things, I meet them in somewhere scenic, and we begin this episode of the WYcast featuring DJ Lubi. Had to be a special one for this one. If you're not familiar with DJ Lubi, you've been living under a rock. You probably have been influenced in some way by one of his releases, one of his gigs, especially if you're based in the West Yorkshire area. An incredibly influential dude who's been putting on nights, gigs, people forever and a day, has put me on plenty of times, but has put on some really big names in the UK that have gone on to do great things. He pushes and promotes all types of genres of music. Hip-hop isn't really his main thing, but he's done a lot in the hip-hop, and I thought it was necessary that we get him on the show and talk about his life. And good Lord, do I regret that, because he goes on. But the problem is, he's like, oh, in the 1970s we did this, and then in the 1980s we did this, and in the 1990s we did... So yeah, you'll get the idea. He's a legend, a really sick guy, a good friend, and you're going to enjoy it. DJ Lubi, how the hell are you, mate?
I'm all right, mate.
It's great to see you, man. Thanks very much for joining me inside the Brudenell.
The legendary Brudenell.
We were going to get on the stage, but there's some work going on at the moment. But you get the behind the scenes of what goes on at the Brudenell before the gig.
The work is good because they're putting in new soundproofing tiles, so
stuff.
The sound is going to be even better than
it was before.
is.
And it's already thought of as one of the best small venues in the in Leeds anyway.
In the UK, my friend.
Yeah,
award-winning venue we're sitting in.
Well, and this is one of the reasons. So obviously I've had a lot of rappers and producers on this show, but I talk to people like Tony Green, and it would be remiss of me not to include a dude like yourself. You've traversed all the genres of Leeds and put all sorts of bits and pieces on, but you've done a lot for hip-hop. And I wanted to get onto you about that kind of thing. But you, first and foremost, mainly promote kind of funk, soul, jazz shows, as well as a lot of salsa work as well, right?
Well, I suppose you call it world music. So I do salsa, Cuban music, Brazilian music, African music.
Right, yeah.
That's one half of it, sort of global beats, world music side. And then the other side is jazz and what we call jazz plus, which is jazz plus soul. You know, all the music that's related to jazz music, I kind of put it all together: jazz, soul, rhythm and blues, funk. It's all from the same
jazz
tree,
artists who don't call themselves jazz anymore, but are you putting them under that jazz plus?
Jazz artists who no longer call themselves jazz, but still want to play jazz gigs and jazz festivals.
Yeah.
Gig's a gig, mate. You know?
Fair, dude. So, bro, I just want to know a bit about you, because I think that's the most interesting bit. Remind me when you were born, because you've been in the game for years, right? I was looking at you were posting someone on Instagram, and you were in a salsa band on bass in the 90s, mid-90s.
Yeah, 91 to 96.
How old were you then?
Mate, I'm in my early 60s now.
Are you actually?
I'm in my early 60s,
God, you look good for 60s, you know.
I'm trying my best. I don't drink anymore.
Yeah, fair.
I gave up the Jazz Woodbines 25 years ago, so I'm hanging in there, right?
Are you Shipley born and bred? Are you Bradford lad?
Shipley born and bred, mate.
Nice.
Still living there, my little house, my little jazz palace.
Yeah.
I kind of grew up, you know, I call myself a Bradford guy, but like Shipley has its own distinct little thing. It's a little town on its own, you know, a satellite town.
I love Shipley. I lived there for a couple of years myself, and there's just something about that place, man, and like access to everywhere as well. But there's something about it in there.
It's cool.
What So you're incredibly knowledgeable with music and stuff. Like, was there just music constantly growing up? Were your
Well,
parents both
it's
into it?
interesting because I've been thinking about this, obviously, because we're doing this, and so like, look, I grew up as a kid in the mid late '60s. I was hearing music, obviously. That's late '60s. You would have heard the Beatles on the radio and stuff.
Sure.
And but I had an older sister. I do have an older sister still. Who's 3 years older than me, and she was kind of already into music by late '60s, early '70s. She'd have been 12, 13.
Dope.
And
Collected records and stuff.
Yeah. So she was buying pop records and stuff. But Dad had his own records. My dad is Serbian, so I'm from Serbian descent.
Right.
And my mum's Serbian too.
Yeah.
But Dad had his own records. We had a record player, like I remember from I was 5 or 6 years old, like early '70s. We got one of the first stereos, with the stereo sound records, the Panda Cross, and we used to sit there and go, woo. But Dad liked Serbian sort of religious music, choral music.
Oh, okay.
As well as I've got his old collection at home, and it's full of like
few
crooners.
Right.
I love Frank Sinatra and Johnny Mathis and Dean Martin and all those kind of classic crooners. I've got Andy Williams records there and Nat King Cole.
Can't go wrong. Yeah,
So I love that. And then I got a ton of easy listening stuff, like easy listening Latin. That kind of, that cheesy, easy listening.
That. Music for pleasure.
Music
MFP,
for pleasure. Contour
can't
Records,
go wrong.
MFP. It's got loads of those, and I'm half wondering, was that why I sort of got into Latin music later on?
You reckon that's what
I
it is?
heard these cheesy versions of Tequila. But so he had records, Mum had records. Mum loved Serbian folk dances, so she had like folk music. I got her whole Serbian folk 45 collection, 100 records. It's great stuff. And then my sister was buying pop records.
Right.
Because that's what we did, at that age. We would listen to Radio 1 in the school holidays, and then we would watch Top of the Pops, which I don't know if it's not been on, has it, for like decades?
Not for it, but it was a great way to find about
it was
music
a weekly show every Thursday night, and that's how you saw new releases and new artists and, who's number one, chart rundown.
Yeah.
But yeah, so early 70s, I was into sort of like listening to the charts to see who's going up and who's going down. I bought my first record about 71.
What was your first record?
Incredible, right? But it was Saturday Night at the Movies by the Drifters, who were like
at the movies. Classic.
Yeah, but look, I was 8 years old. It's not like I was into like black American rhythm and blues and soul at that age.
That's okay.
There's a story here, which is my sister and some of her girlfriends were going to a record shop to buy whatever, pop records and that. And I just got all psyched up. I said, I want a record. I want to buy one. And I bugged my mum so much. My mum got a purse out and said, how much is a record? And my sister said, like a shilling or something. It was here, take him with you. And my sister hated it, and her friends, and they ran off and tried to hide and ran away from me. But
right.
But yeah, I got to the record shop in Shipley,
Sick.
And it was old school record shops, 60s and 70s. They were often in the back of an electrical shop that sold toasters and TVs. And in the back, I think this was called Valence's Records, and they had a record shop. Anyway, so I went in there and they bought their stuff within like 5 minutes. They went to buy certain things.
Yeah.
And my sister was like, oh, come on, I'm going to leave you. I don't know what, I'm kind of 8 years old. I'm like, never been in a record shop.
Yeah.
So like, behind the counter was the top 20. And I just looked up there, and number 2 was the Drifters, Saturday Night at the Movies. And the only reason I picked it was they'd been on Top of the Pops. So I kind of connected.
Yeah.
So I bought it, took it home. And apparently I played it about 20 times till my mum said, stop.
Please stop with that damn thing.
But
Amazing.
something clicked there, and I had a record. And then I kind of started buying just top 5 every week. I buy a couple of singles.
Yeah.
I worked a paper round like a lot of kids. I got my pocket money, and at that time, so music became a thing, but not the thing, the main thing in my life, which it would happen later. But it was just, early teens. It was part of like my early teens. Like I like sport, hanging out with my mates, going to the school disco, going, all that sort of stuff. Starting to sort of think about clothes and be able to buy. My mum started to let me buy fashionable clothes.
Right.
So there's your pocket money, right? You know, going
70s
off,
fashionable,
Oxford
this is.
bags, mate. You know, and had the old feather cut and everything. And but like music was part of that. Yeah, discovering girls. You know, 10, 11, 12.
So you were out
first
on loads
loves
of
and that. So music was just a part of all that.
Yeah.
But kind of a few years later, something happened where like music became the thing.
What was that thing? Do you remember?
That thing's
what the
called punk rock.
Right, punk rock
Punk
changed
rock,
your
my friend.
life.
Punk rock
Not the
changed my
first
life.
person on this podcast to say that.
Punk
man.
rock, mate.
What was it? What
I remember,
first
and
band?
look, it's seared into my memory. Like, you know, it was I call these things my musical epiphanies, right? So I'm just buying records. I'm 11, 12, 13. I'm liking music and stuff, but I had a little transistor radio because that's how we listen to music. We didn't have mobile phones, as you know.
Yep.
But you could listen to Radio 1 all day from whenever, 6 till midnight.
Yep.
And I was really bad at doing homework. I always did it like 10 o'clock at night.
Last thing, yeah.
So the only thing that I could listen to at that time was the John Peel show. So that was on 10 till 12. I think it was Monday till Thursdays, and then he got the Fridays later on.
Yep.
So I just remember listening. It just used to be background.
Yep.
I wasn't particularly into like the proggy rock stuff he was playing, but he played a right mix of stuff. He played reggae tunes and like some old blues thing, and then this record. He's just announced this record, and it was The Damned, New Rose,
Right.
the first punk single, British punk single to come out.
Right.
Obviously, I would learn about punk after that. That the Ramones were releasing stuff in the States,
before,
and that.
yeah.
But it came on. I just remember stopping what I was writing because it just has this massive guitar intro, like, you know, and a massive drums intro, and then I'm just like, what is this? You know, so I just listened to it. I got my pen ready, and in the margin of the notepad, whatever, I just wrote, he said, that's The Damned, New Rose.
Get that down.
And that was it.
Straight down back to
I didn't know
shit,
what
boy.
it was because I remember going to school the next day and chatting to a kid called Austin who's into heavy rock, and he was really into music. Like when I say he was a rocker at 13, whatever it was, 14,
Proper into it.
proper. You know, he had the leather jacket, you know, the biker jacket with the denim jacket with the sleeves ripped off over the top with deep purple
Proper cool.
on the back, you know. So, but Austin was cool.
Deep purple on the back too,
You know,
yeah?
on the back of the denim, you know,
Looks like
like
a
you know,
Simpsons.
motorcycle boots at 14 or something. but he was a music nerd in his kind of music, and I just said, mate, I had this record on John Peel's show last night called New Rose by The Damned. What is that? And he just sort of said, oh yeah, it's called punk rock. I'm like, what? What's that? He said, it's really big in London. You know, and then he said, oh, it sort of started in the States. He gave me this, like, you know, Iggy Pop and Velvet Underground influence, and then these bands started playing, like the Ramones and Blondie and people, you know. And then he said, but yeah, it's really taken off, like bands like The Damned, the Sex Pistols, the Clash. I said, how do you know all this stuff? He said, oh, you want to buy New Musical Express? They're all over it.
Right, yeah, I've heard of it.
So I went home that day from school. I went to my news agents who used to get me like the Beano on order,
Yeah.
you know, and whatever, you know, Whizzer and Chips and
Get
all
rid
those
of my
things.
subscription to the
I said,
Beano.
right. I think I'd sort of stopped getting them, but I said, can you get a music paper called New Musical Express? And he looked it up, and I remember a big ledger, like a big
Yeah,
book.
yeah.
Yeah, I can get it. It comes every Thursday. I said, I do have to sort of pay, like, prepay that. He said, no, I'll just order one copy.
Nice.
If you don't come in, I'll put it out on the shelves and sell it. So that became my Bible.
Right, really?
Mate, that was every Thursday. New Musical Express, go to school, reading everything, singles reviews,
Yeah.
you know, and then so that would have been end of 76, and then 77 I started buying the records.
Yeah, they were in the magazine.
Completely changed. Feather cut went, cropped hair, spiked up with Vaseline.
Spikes, nice.
Flipping it. Poor old mum. I took my flared jeans. I said, Mum, can you take all these flares off and make them drain pipes?
Yeah.
And she did.
Nice.
Oh, my mum's
Can't beat a useful
diamond.
mum with the
Just
embroidery.
stuff like that, raiding my dad's old 50s jackets in that, you know, he never wore and stuff, and just got into it. just properly got into it.
Did you go down
Punk
London
rock.
a lot then?
No, come on, I was 14, 15.
Fair enough. I wondered if there was were there mega buses back then? I don't know.
No, but there was like 4 or 5 of us at my school, Nowell Grammar School.
Austin included.
That were punksters,
Right.
right? Out of like 1,200 people.
Yeah. So you stood out like sore
we clung
thumbs.
together, and there was a little sort of Shipley punk contingent.
Right.
But I was a little skinny guy. I couldn't go to any gigs.
Okay.
Couldn't get in.
Yeah, because of them
So
being
like
too young.
through '77, you know, I went to Bradford University and they wouldn't let me in. You know, you could come in. He's not 18.
Ah,
At
God.
home, you know. So I couldn't get to any gigs. But finally, I went to my first ever gig, September 1977. It was at St George's Hall in Bradford,
Very nice.
which was as you know, sort of council-run place. I think they have 14 plus or something, 16 plus. So you know, I was like nearly 16, and they're not that strict on it. And gigs finish at 10:30. So
Sounds.
I'd gone to see a triple bill, which was there's a band called Mink DeVille from New York that were sort of not really punk, but sleaze rock. They were more like Lou Reed kind of, you know. It was all about life in the Lower East Side of New York, and you know, heroin and coke and rock and roll.
Yeah.
But we liked them. They had a single out called Spanish Stroll that I'd bought, and then the middle band were called Eddie and the Hot Rods, that were like a young R&B rhythm and blues band, but played punk energy.
Sick.
But the headliners were Dr. Feelgood.
Oh,
They're the
right.
governors
Nice.
of British rhythm and blues.
I've heard of them.
So I didn't go to see them, but you know what? They killed those 2 other bands. They smashed it, and we ended up down the front pogoing. And that was my first gig. Like, I'd been 15, yeah, 70,
And
September
first gig at St
77.
George's Hall.
First
So
gig
Bradford,
ever
that.
in this amazing venue that was sold out.
Wow.
And I saw these 3 amazing bands, and I kind of just, I think that must have been like the spark that I love live music.
Yeah.
You know, and then after that, I was again, I couldn't get into any gigs. I went to see the Sex Pistols in Keighley, and it sold out, but I couldn't have got in. I was too small. But by early 78, I started to go to Bradford University, and they were a bit more slack.
Yeah.
I started to see all the bands, and then I was seeing, you know, bands were coming to St George's Hall then, like the Buzzcocks, like the big bands.
Yeah.
But then in 78, I started coming to Leeds.
Right.
Because there's a ton of bands coming to Leeds University. You know, I saw everybody, the Ramones, the Clash, Buzzcocks.
Did you see the Sex Pistols in the end?
No.
Because you didn't see
I
them in
didn't see
Keighley.
them in Keighley in 1977, in December, and they broke up in 78. In January 78, they went off to the States and they broke up. So that was interesting that year because, you know, by mid-78, that whole punk, that proper punk energy had kind of...
Had its golden era.
Yeah, well, Pistols had split up. The whole Sid Vicious thing had happened. He died, you know, under those weird circumstances. John Lydon formed his new band, Public Image Limited, which was more into sort of dub and you know, electronic music and experimental music, and Clash had gone off to tour the States. The Damned were just buffoons for me. It's weird. In the space of 2 years, like, I thought they were amazing, but like they're great. I love the Damned, but you know, it was still kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
You know,
I get it.
and you know, as you get older, I think your musical taste, everything kind of changes, doesn't it? You get more life experience, and you know, so.
Fully.
So like, you know, still into it, but 78 was important for me because I bought a bass guitar.
I was just about to ask about this. So this is late teens moving into your 20s.
So no. This is even before. I'm 16.
16 in 78,
so,
right.
as I said, there was a few punks at school. One was a kid called John, and John and me were good mates, and he was proper punk. Like, I was kind of sort of halfway punk. You know, he lived it properly, but he had a guitar, and he said, "Oh, my brother's selling like a bass guitar. Why don't you buy it and we'll start a band?"
I love that.
Which is punk rock as
yeah,
punk rock
you can't play
get.
it, but fucking
I
buy
can't
it.
play
We'll
it.
figure it out.
You know, I never played an instrument in my life, so I said, "Oh, how much do you want for it?" He said, "Oh." So his brother was a few years older. He's on the upper six, and he said, "Ah, 30 quid." I thought, all right.
It's all right. I don't know what that is.
I don't know, 30 quid, but I hustled it together. He brought it into school, wanting a case. He just brought it in on the bus.
Bonk.
He gave me it, and that was it. I just got a plectrum and plugged away on it.
Were you just like playing
didn't know-
by ear? So
I
you'd
didn't-
hear.
I don't know what I was doing, but I was just like, you know, I mean, it was punk rock, so it was like do 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 do
Chugging.
do.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
like listening to records and maybe like listening to that bass line and stuff. And so me and John started jamming in my bedroom or in his house in Rose. So you know, and then he brought his mate along one time to play drums, but he didn't have a kit.
What was he playing on?
Two upturned plastic buckets and a couple of cardboard boxes.
It's fucking
It's
punk
punk,
as
mate.
fuck, mate.
So I had a little sort of 20-watt practice amp, and John had a little amp as well, and he just had like a fuzz pedal, and everything went through that, you know. Like, and I got a wah-wah pedal for the bass.
Oh,
and it was just like,
nice.
I don't know. All I know is like the next door neighbours at my house used to bang on the wall and come round and say, "Kana," that's my mum, Kana, can you make them stop? It's horrible. Mum would come and bang on the door,
Bless.
"Stop it," you know.
The
So,
neighbours are pissed off.
but look, you know, it was a start, and it was
Course.
like a proper sort of that whole punk thing, man. Was
Yeah.
you can do it. You can do what you want. You can. It reminds me, like in '77, there's a famous fanzine called Sniffing Glue, very famous, like in London.
Right.
But there's a famous front cover of theirs, and it was just a chord pattern
Okay.
diagram. He
Right.
said, "Here's a chord, here's another chord, and another one. Now go form a band." It's like a rallying call. And
Nice. Like a blueprint.
so yeah,
for it.
so,
That's
so
very
we
cool.
we played for about 6, 8, 10 months. We're never going to get a gig. But then I met some guys locally who could play. A drummer who had a full drum kit.
Nice,
A
nice.
guitar player who had a beautiful Gibson semi-acoustic guitar and an amp.
Yeah.
And they had a bass amp. And so I started playing with them.
Was
yeah.
your bass playing better as well by then? Were you like passable
well,
by that
this
point?
is the thing. He said, "Oh, come and jam with us, Lubi." You know, so I took my bass round, and he said, "Right." He started playing some chords. He said, "Oh, like C, G, F, whatever." You know, I said, "What's that?" So I said, he tried to explain what a chord was, and then he said, "Right, I'll play this chord. The root of this chord is that. You play that."
Yeah.
Oh, right. So I
Nice.
started to
Patient.
learn about like chord progressions and stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, and the bass actually fits with that.
Perfect.
But also, they were sort of more into kind of pop punk stuff, like the Undertones and that. They wanted to sort of do melodic kind of punk tunes. So that was cool.
Yeah.
Stuck with them. Never did a gig.
Never did a gig down.
No, again, it was this eternal, like, just jam band. But finally in '79, sort of autumn '79, I met another bunch of mates who were on the punk scene.
Yeah.
And I was getting more into post-punk music.
Right.
It's a little bit more kind of electronic, a bit darker, you know, and not just the thrash stuff and deep, weird lyrics, you know.
Yeah.
People thought they were poets and writing these deep and dark lyrics.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we started a band and we got a name. We were called Mephisto Waltz, like Mephisto as in the devil.
Oh, right.
Devil's
Okay.
Waltz.
Mephisto Waltz.
And it was like me on bass, John on guitar and Vox organ.
Vox
Vox,
organ.
mate.
What
I
the
don't know
frick's
where we
that?
got it, but we got a Vox organ.
Right.
Mirko, another Serbian guy, on guitar.
Yeah.
And Ivor on drum machine.
Drum machine in the late 70s.
Mate, it was a little box this big
Damn.
with 3 buttons,
Yeah.
and it had a bunch of kind of pre-programmed, like, bossa nova,
I was just.
soft rock.
I can hear the bossa
right.
nova.
And then you had a snare, a bass, a snare, and a hi-hat.
Okay.
We used to just add
Drum
to-
machine it. Inventing hip hop
It was
over in the punk
amazing,
scene.
mate.
Wow.
Amazing. Anyway, we gigged in
Oh.
'79, '80 around Bradford. We gigged
What was
in
your
a
first
little
venue?
indie kind of post-punk scene.
Yep.
Biggest thing we ever did was support The Fall,
That's huge.
which was huge for us.
Whereabouts were that?
A place in Bradford that no longer exists. It was called the Palm Cove,
Okay.
which was up White Abbey, kind of coming out of Manningham,
Oh, yeah.
coming out of Lum Lane, going up Wetley Hill that direction. And
Okay.
it was a reggae venue.
Sick.
I can't remember the guy's name. No, he wasn't an old Jamaican guy. He was a Jamaican guy, but he was older than us.
Yeah, yeah,
Right,
yeah.
so he
yeah,
might
yeah.
have been like 35 or 40. But him and his wife really liked us and let us rehearse there.
That's too cool.
Because a lot of the post-punk scene, that was our after the pub hang.
Right.
You know, because we like reggae music, and you know, they started putting post-punk and indie bands on,
Nice.
and they said, "Oh, the fall's coming, and we need the support. Do you want to do it?"
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, the story from that one is like me and Mirko. We loved the fall, and we stuck our heads in the door, changing room just to say hello, and Mark E. Smith just shouted "F off" or something, and we turned around and went, "Yes."
We got told to fuck off by a hero. Yeah, man, that is so that music.
So that's where the live music thing came in. But that, to be honest with you, that's where I started to put gigs on. That's how I learned, because no one would book us in the beginning. So we put our own gigs on.
Nice,
Again,
DIY.
very punk, very DIY. But we just went to a pub, upstairs room, and you know, with 30 quid hire. And we got two bands who were our mates to support.
Yep.
And then we all chipped in with like the back line and stuff and PA hire. And we just, you know, a mate sat on the door and took the money. And that's how it, but it's the same principle as now. You hire
Absolutely.
a venue, we didn't put the gig on sale because I don't think we did advance tickets, but you still, you know, you're taking money on the door.
Of course.
You do promotion, you get your artwork. I mean, we did posters. In those days, it would have been fly posting, illegal fly posting.
Yeah.
You know, just like on
all
old buildings. And those early gigs, I'd been to art college and done like a basic 1 year sort of introduction course, but not gone any further. But I'd learned how to silk screen print, hand silk screen printed. The posters do.
Nice.
It's nice, but you know, think of 150 posters, hand silk.
Oh my God.
You know, like A2 size, and then we just went round and, you know, pot of paste.
Yeah.
It was a three-man job. Someone's got the posters, someone's got the paste, and the third person's a lookout.
Keeping like at night.
Yeah, for the cops, you know.
Of course.
But also
you did it
for,
late
like,
at night as well.
Football hooligans, or you know, or just
Ointment.
Bradford, mate. You know,
Yeah.
So we just like big overcoats on, posters inside, walking along, just hitting, because that's what you did. There was no poster drums. It's not like Leeds today with the official poster drums.
No.
You know, it's proper guerrilla stuff.
I feel like there is opportunity there to do it kind of punk style, though. If you really need, you know, if a bunch of friends did get together and put something on specific, they could do it in a way that might get ripped down and all the rest of it, but you could.
Yeah, but
create
the
enough
law's
interest.
tighter now, so if you do that now,
You get
I don't
found
know about
out.
Bradford.
Yeah.
It's probably the same in Bradford, but like, you know, council's tightened up loads. Cause,
Yeah, I guess.
I mean, I think we mainly did derelict buildings or stuff, you know, like, but then we might put them on those green telephone box things, and, you know, which, anyway, that's how you did it. We just made photocopied little flyers. You know, we did the artwork and we got it reduced down and then put 4 flyers on an A4, photocopied them, and with a hand strimmer.
Nice.
You know, and then that's how you had to promote your gigs. You had posters and you had the little flyers in your pocket that you went to the pub, you give them to your mates. You stand outside another gig, flyer in, standard stuff.
Yeah.
You know, obviously no internet.
Yeah, of course. Nah.
Mate, obviously,
help and a hindrance.
No, mate, there was no mobile phones.
No,
so, like,
totally.
you know, it's
kind of a help and a hindrance, though, because there's so much information with the internet now, whereas there wasn't as much, so people were probably more hungry to find out that there were gigs going on, do you know what I mean? Like,
mate, it's like, we'll get on that later, but it's oversaturated.
Of course
now.
it is.
It's like there's so much noise.
bloody nightmare. Yeah. So back then it would be
but
simpler.
Then, and also, if you go back then, you're kind of tribal. Music was tribal. You were in your
100%,
tribe, so
yeah.
you were a punk,
Yeah.
or you were into Northern Soul, or you're a rocker,
And you were with your people.
or you're a
when you were at the
mod
night.
or something. You know,
Fully.
like, so you kind of knew your crowd.
Yep.
You know, and you could reach them. But yeah, that's where I learned about, you know, putting a gig on, hiring venues, sorting PA out, doing you know, designing. I designed the stuff.
Yeah.
And I would cut and paste and letter set,
Nice.
lettering.
Yeah.
And cut and paste and photocopying, and but that's those skills. That's what started me off.
Yeah, of
you know.
course. Well, how does it get from punk rock to
jazz?
To salsa? Well, I think more or Latin kind of, because you playing bass in '96 in a salsa band, in a 12-piece salsa band. I'm just trying to. Well, I feel like I'm fast forwarding a whole decade there.
You
'cause there's
missed
all
out the 80s, mate.
What happened in the '80s then? Did
The
you
80s,
go?
the 80s is when.
synth?
So, like I said, like end of the '70s, 79, 78, 79, 80, that kind of post-punk thing was happening.
Yep.
And there was quite a lot of groups at the time that they were bringing in elements of other music.
Yep.
Like the Gang of Four from Leeds, they were bringing in like funk guitar.
Right.
And like funk and even disco beats, but with the political lyrics and stuff, and still that punk energy.
Yeah.
A group like the Pop Group from Bristol, they were bringing in jazz. They had a sax player that wailed alto sax, like just didn't play, just screeched, you know.
Yeah.
But there was groups as who else was there? Probably like in the States, a guy called James Chance, the Contortions, his band. They were playing funk. They were doing James Brown funk tunes at 120 miles per hour.
Yeah.
You know, like I Can't Stand It by James Brown. With him, this guy James Chance squawking like alto sax squeaks. A lot of the interviews these bands were giving, Pop Group and James Chance especially, they kept mentioning jazz. And they had sax players, so obviously music journalists were like asking them like about that, like, you know.
Are you
and
jazz?
Yeah, who's your influences? And the names John Coltrane,
Kept
Ornette
coming
Coleman kept popping up.
Yeah.
I remember reading New Musical Express and kind of like, oh, who are these guys?
Right.
And so, we were at school one day in the upper six and lower six, sorry, and a bunch of us were chatting. Like we had a little geeky music circle.
Love it.
4 of us.
Mate, I'd have loved to be in that
One was
circle.
Austin, was the heavy rocker from before.
Who told you about the
I
magazine?
used to
and
read
that?
Sounds.
Yeah.
And like, you know. So I would read New Musical Express. There was a mate called Sedgwick. His name was Paul, but we just called him Sedge all the time. And he was a post-punk kid. I played guitar, actually. And then there was a kid in the upper six called Malcolm that was a jazz rock.
Ah, okay.
He used to sit there in the common room with his Gibson SG. He loved John McLaughlin and Carlos Santana, and he'd just be running these
Shredding
licks.
away.
He didn't have an amp.
Right.
He was like acoustically just talking and just doing
Sick.
shredding.
Nice.
Well, we're sitting around one day, and I remember asking him, because he's into jazz. I said, who's Ornette Coleman? And he said, oh, yeah, he's a guy who kind of changed, you know, he brought in the whole free jazz. So what's free jazz? You know, it was a little bit like that Austin thing with the punk rock.
Yeah.
And I said, who's John Coltrane? And he said, oh, yeah, he brought in this style of playing and this and that. And I remember just saying, like in that chat, I should really check some of these guys out. And that's how it happened. I thought, yeah. And then Sedgwick pipes up and said, oh, I think my sister moved out. She left some records. I think there's a John Coltrane record in there. I'll bring it in tomorrow and you can tape it.
Oh, nice.
That shows you what
Home
era
taping
we're
is
in.
killing
Home
music,
taping is
Lubi.
killing music. And he said, he came in the next day and he brought in a Love Supreme, which is
Big
that was my
album,
first
yeah.
record.
Yeah.
And it blew me away.
Of course
like,
it did.
Like just, I don't know what jazz was, but like I remember putting on side Acknowledgement Part 1, A Love Supreme, the track. You know, it wasn't like I knew what jazz was. It was a quartet with a double bass player doing a walking, and the drummer going, and a sax player playing sort of a bluesy sort of tune.
Yep.
This was just
Nothing like it. Yeah.
and the drumming on it as well, Elvin Jones. It was like it wasn't that kind of walking sort of hi-hat
Like
sort
men.
of thing. It was like all over the kit.
Yeah.
You know, it was like just all polyrhythmic beats and then McCoy Tyner comes in after I don't know how many bars. And this piano is like the loudest acoustic piano. Bang, bang, bang. You know, it's pretty punk.
Yeah.
The
Fair,
power
good
of
point.
it.
Interesting.
That's all happening before the big man comes in with his, you know, Coltrane, and then it just goes off.
Yeah.
And then it comes out the way it comes in. The outro is like, you know, Train drops out after his solo, and then slow. Then McCoy Tyner stops playing, and then it just goes. I think Elvin Jones stops playing. Then it just it's that pedal.
Yeah.
But then this Coltrane starts singing "A Love Supreme." I mean, it totally blew my mind. I was like, "What is this?"
Yeah.
So that was it. It was 79, right? So I didn't just flip to be Mr. Jazz from Johnny Punk,
Fair.
you know. But
You wanted to know more.
yeah, I still love my post-punk stuff.
Yeah.
Like, you know, but I started to go to Bradford Central Library, and they had a record library. You could, the old days.
Rent 'em out, innit?
Just rent them out
Beautiful.
and tape them.
Yeah.
So like, I just started taking every John Coltrane album home and taping it, and just that's it. 1980, getting a bit more into the jazz, but I'd say like it was like 80%. 79 was 80% Mr. Punk, post-punk, 20% jazz.
Yeah.
1980 was 50-50.
Yeah.
81, I started buying jazz records, second-hand from a flea market, Bradford Flea Market, which was in the Wool Exchange, which is that bookshop now. Waterstones.
Yeah, I know it, yeah.
Every Tuesday, flea market. And one stall there just had jazz records for like $1 to $3.
I was saying the good thing is, at the time you were buying it, it had all probably come out 20 years before, a lot of the good stuff. So you were just getting it on the cheap.
So I started buying bebop. The guy, he sold all music. His big thing was rock and roll, and he had a couple of boxes of jazz. Yeah. And the jazz was Count Basie, Duke Ellington, Louis Armstrong, all that kind of stuff. The swing bands and Glenn Miller and that. But he always had sort of modern jazz quartet, Charlie Parker. Nice. I started buying, Miles Davis stuff, Coltrane. Yeah. I bought a giant step there.
Really?
Like original pressing from 59 or something.
Amazing.
For £2.
Don't.
So that I'm by then it's like 80% jazz.
Yeah.
20% post-punk. And 82, February 82, I did my first jazz thing.
What event?
Event at Bradford University.
So you put this on?
It was called the Hot Club.
That's very
Unbeknownst
cool.
to me, there was the Hot Club of Paris, Django Reinhardt, Gypsy Jazz back in the 30s. I didn't know that.
No, wow, that's complete coincidence.
But I put this night on, and I just took some records down to the Subway bar in the University of Bradford and invited my mates along. And I had a co-promoter, Simon, who was a good mate, who'd been to art college, and he was into 50s and 60s black and white movies. And he had a reel-to-reel and got these movies, and we showed those on the wall. It was a bit arty, to be honest.
Oh, mate, I'd love to be there,
it wasn't sort of like playing music to dance. We were just hanging out, like 50 people there. We were just chilling, and I played jazz. I played some deep soul. I had a few soul records, not banging soul, but
just playing vinyl.
Donny Hathaway and so. Oh yeah, it was only vinyl.
Yeah, right.
And a few funk things, and that was it. The Hot Club. It went well. I did a couple more there, and then I just started going to jazz gigs as well.
Right.
The first jazz gig I ever went to was in '82.
Yeah. Who was that?
In Bradford University, Bradford Jazz Festival.
Wow.
Art Ensemble of Chicago, the most far out kind of US
free jazz
you could get. They were legends.
I wouldn't have been able to hack that, I don't think.
It was sold out, 2 hour set, from free jazz to African rhythms to New Orleans, second line. The full sort of black musical history from Africa to the States, the blues. It was incredible. Just blew my mind. Another one of those musical epiphanies.
Yeah.
Right, that's it. and so I was still playing bass then.
Yeah.
And I was trying to learn how to do play blues in B flat, walking bass lines, and
12-bar blues.
Just listening to like bass players, and that's how I couldn't read music.
Yeah, of course. So, all by ear then, definitely.
All by ear, yeah. And so that would have been like 82, 83. Got a little jazz quartet together.
Did you? Yeah. What was the lineup?
Well, it was Latin jazz actually, because this is where the salsa comes in.
Right, I'm gonna say.
So like, as soon as you get into like post World War II modern jazz, New York jazz, like bebop, you find your way to Latin jazz. Afro-Cuban jazz was happening in New York in the mid 40s, developing the same time as bebop.
Right.
So like people like Dizzy Gillespie had a Cuban conga player called Channel Pozo playing with him. Right, and Charlie Parker would play with Matt Machito and the Afro-Cubans, like as a special guest. So I got into that Latin jazz, and again, it's like whenever I get into something, I've got to dig deeper.
Of course,
what is this?
Just get interested
50s
in
Latin jazz, and then there's 50s mambo, and then 60s Latin jazz, and then that took me to salsa in the 70s. So that's how it went.
Right.
So it became my two main loves, I'd say 82, 83 onwards. Jazz and salsa, Cuban music.
Yeah.
and I started buying the records. I started DJing for dancers.
Yeah.
For jazz dancers primarily.
Oh, okay.
No salsa scene, mate. There wasn't it's
king.
massive now.
You get
but
shipped
it was
in
like,
everywhere.
Literally, I did the first salsa club in Leeds in '86.
Right.
In Lower Merion Street, a place that would later become the Gallery, but it was called Coconut Grove.
Yeah.
Because that's where was the hub of this jazz scene, and it's where that crew. I don't know if you've read about the Dig family.
Yeah, I've seen you mention them
so
quite
like
a lot.
me and my mate Chico, Chris Murphy, DJ Chico Mallow, we'd been doing a jazz thing in Bradford, and he was in the band with me.
Was that the quartet you mentioned before?
Well, it was a quartet, then it became a sextet, then it became an octet, but we called it Sonando, which is a title of an album by a guy called Poncho Sanchez.
Okay.
I think it means dreaming in Spanish as well, Soñando or something like that. And we're playing like Latin jazz, hard bop.
Yeah.
But he was a conga player, I was a bass player, and in '85, we gigged everywhere in Bradford, so we come to Leeds, and we heard a guy had a club called Jazz at the Coconut Grove. That was this the name of the venue.
Yeah.
We came to hustle a gig there. We met the guy, his name's Jip Damone, and he was the owner, co-owner of the place. And his family owned Salvo's restaurant in Headingley.
Oh, I know it. Yeah.
So his dad had kind of started this place in town as well, which was called Salvo's, and the upstairs room was called Coconut Grove.
Huh.
And we just got on like a house. We were just, all three of us just vibed. We're all there in our 3-button Italian suits with our crew cuts, and we all had goatee beards, and Jip had a Homburg.
So you're dressing jazz, salsa jazz,
oh, man,
Latin jazz now.
Complete. 82 onwards, it was the goatee and
I love that you changed. You got your mum to. Did your mum alter your outfit for that as well?
By then, though, it was like complete, like a crew cut, sort of like West Coast jazz style.
Nice.
White overcoat, like Steve McQueen in Bullet, and the white chinos, which you couldn't buy at,
violin case
C&A.
with a machine gun in.
But we, Italian hand-stitched loafers,
Very nice.
Norwegian loafers, whatever, from New York. No, we just got on musically. It was interesting because Jip was promoting. We went to get a gig there. He had every Wednesday.
Yep.
But he had 2 turntables and a mixer, and he was playing records between and after sets.
Okay.
And he was playing jazz music.
Yeah.
But it was a jazz club. It was like a Ronnie Scott's type place. So it was tables and chairs, acoustic grand piano. It was you sat there and you listened.
Yeah.
But me and Chico, we started 83, 84, started playing jazz for dancers.
Yeah.
This was a hardcore jazz dancer, bunch of jazz guys, young guys in Bradford that were, oh man, you should see that old school jazz fusion dancing. It's incredible.
There's almost like a bit of breakdancing in the sort of style of that stuff, right?
So, I didn't bring the poster in, but I should have done. Me and Chico started playing this stuff. We met these guys. And eventually, and also, I didn't even get to hip hop, did I? I've skipped hip hop. We'll come back.
We'll get on to hip hop. You skipped it a bit.
No, I've skipped it here chronologically, but we'll get back to it. But I'd always liked hip hop, even though I was going through that post-punk into jazz thing.
Yeah.
Not hip hop, rap music.
Yeah,
let's call it what it was.
Yeah.
And I liked it, and I've been buying the records. I never played them out. I just a bunch of us liked it. A bunch of us post-punk guys.
That must have been like straight off the bat, early, like late 70s, early 80s sort of stuff.
79, Rapper's Delight.
So you were straight in with Sugar Hill
Gang. Saw on top of the pops. Saw him on top of the pops.
Word. Well, it was globally, renowned.
And just like, but I've been getting into it, and even though I'd kind of gone into jazz, there was a bunch of us. We still, like 82, we all went to see Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five at the Hacienda in Manchester. I think it was 82 or 83.
Very cool.
Africa Bambaataa and the Soul Sonic Force. We went to those gigs.
Yeah,
we loved them. But me and Chico wanted to do a dance floor jazz session.
Yep.
In Bradford, and someone we knew said, "Oh, why don't you go to Checkpoint, which is the West Indian Community Centre at where is it now? Top of town. If you're coming in from Lum Lane End and you're going down into town, it's just on your right there, where that was that
near
big
Beehive and stuff.
Where the building society used that, the big building society building, whatever it was called.
The really brutalist looking
the
one. I
brutalist
know
one.
what you mean. Yeah.
But it's just across from there.
It's Crown Point. No.
Yeah. Checkpoint.
Checkpoint Charlie.
Community Centre. And you know, it's like the West Indian Community Centre, a Caribbean Community Centre there, and they did their own gigs and that. But we went to see him and we said, oh, we kind of like to do something. A mate of ours collects hip hop. We had a friend who was buying the records and wanted to DJ.
Yeah.
But he wanted to DJ, but he was going to be. And said, oh, we want to do something for Paul in one room. We got to, you know, and then we'll play jazz in the other room.
Sick.
And they just said, that's fantastic, because we're actually thinking of doing a rap night, a hip hop night ourselves.
Yeah.
So why don't we collaborate?
Yeah.
So I said, fantastic. And I said, right. But then they said, we've got our own DJs. So poor Paul, I can't remember what he called himself, Prime Cuts or something. We just, poor Paul got kind of pushed out of the way.
Fair dues.
So it was cool because they'd been doing some break dance. They let the young break dancers, they were all like 14, 15, 16, they let them, you know, train there.
Yeah,
and
nice.
they did it. So it was tying in that element of it. And so they said, okay, we'll host the rap and hip hop room.
Yep.
I said, cool. And that was the main room that held about 150 people. And you can do the upstairs. There's an upstairs room that held 50, 60, I don't know, 80 people. There's a pool table there. And
Sick.
they sold fried chicken there upstairs. It was great.
Can't go wrong.
So anyway, I'm like, what should we call it? So I came up with the name because I'd just seen a movie, Wild Style.
Nice.
So I called it Wild Style.
Sick.
And they were chuffed with that.
I bet.
And they asked all their young hip hop kids and break, Wild Style, cool. And then I said, look, I'll do some artwork. So I photocopied out of the Face magazine, what's his name, from Rocksteady Crew. I've forgotten his name now. Rocksteady Crew, the main breakdancer ever.
Oh, frig, I don't remember.
I forgot.
No, I don't
Come on, I'm in my early 60s. I photocopied it spinning on his head.
Right.
Got it blown up onto like A2. And I just did the old cut and paste letter set. You know, Wild Style. And it said something. And I nicked that thing. You know, there was that track by, was it Man Parish? Bebop. Hip hop, bebop, don't stop, whatever it was called, that early electro like rap thing.
Okay.
And I just put from bebop to hip hop.
Ah, nice. There's the
The way
tagline.
it was a cool way it ran that night. So their DJs downstairs were just some 16-year-old kids, right? But you know, I'll tell you who they were. They were from two breakdancing crews. Soul City Rockers was one crew, and Beat Street Boys was the other crew, and they battled each other on Broadway every Saturday. That's how I met them.
On Broadway,
I met them there because I was going to WH Smith's to buy records and get, you know, New Musical Express or whatever, jazz magazine, The Wire or something, and I came out and there's like, I walked into I walked into the Bronx. They had the lino out and they had the beatbox and they were breaking, and I was just like, started chatting to them.
In the centre of Bradford.
It was so cool, mate. This is the power of hip hop at the time.
Defo.
Little kids, 14, 15 years old.
In West
they all
Yorkshire.
had trackies on.
Yeah.
And one of the crews was sponsored by a window company or something. No, it was like
That's
pretty
so
well
cool.
advanced.
Fair play, man, yeah.
That was how big it was getting, 82, 83. So anyway, they were the two main crews. Checkpoint, then they would tell Checkpoint who were the main crews in Leeds, in Sheffield, in Manchester, Bolton, and they would reach out to them and invite them to come and do a show.
Yeah.
And then there would be like a freestyle cypher, and they would battle, and they would bring their DJs. The beauty of that was all these regional crews, they would come in a coach and bring 50 people.
Yeah, of course.
It's kind of old all day a soul thing, where, you know, coaches would go from all over cities all over the country to Midlands or the North.
Yeah.
So the DJs were DJ Ease, Nightmares on Wax, George.
Oh, right.
He was one. And Kevin Boy Wonder, who would then become Nightmares on Wax. But they were in one, I think they might have been Soul City Rockers.
Ah, I see. Right, I didn't know.
And the other crew, their DJs, dancers, but were the guys that would become Unique 3, who started that whole electro, that northern bleep scene, you know, that techno thing with the track, the theme.
Right.
And Warp Records and all that. And so they were the DJs. Like, and they were great.
High caliber.
So downstairs in the main room, you know, like 100, 150 maybe sometimes, but 100, mainly kids, breakdancing, big rap tunes, electro tunes,
Yeah.
some 80s soul for the girls, you know, because I don't remember any female breakers back then.
Really?
You know, not then.
Right. There's a lot more inclusivity
Not
with that
then.
now.
So, but there were lots of girls going down. It was a hip-hop thing, you know. It was a visual thing as well.
Yeah,
It was
yeah,
a buzz.
yeah.
It was a new thing, and people were just like,
Dances seem to take people over, don't they, culturally all the time, and that with breakdance.
it's amazing. Amazing. So like that was going on. Meanwhile, you go up the steps, and there's me and Chico dropping the maddest, fastest Afro, Cuban jazz, bebop, to guys doing
jazz dancers doing the
and
that's
but
that's
what's
almost
cool,
breakdancing, isn't
so
it?
they were the same bunch of kids. So the breakers and the jazz guys who were like 17, 18, they all went to the same all dayers in Nottingham on the coach. They're all mates, and I never forget, one of the B-boys came up one time and he just started dropping the moves, the footwork, and all the jazz boys could do all the body popping and stuff. So that was
good crossover with
it
that.
was a great kind of crossover. That was like 84 for about 8-9 months from autumn through to 85, and then this is where me and Chico were developing the band. Didn't want to do that anymore. Went to Leeds, went to that place, Coconut Grove. We met Jip, and then we moved all our gigs to that venue. So we were gigging there on his Wednesday jazz night. He had another big night on Fridays called Downbeat, which basement was playing like early house music, I think, that kind of that jacking, you know, like stuff. And upstairs was a freestyle room, but with a lot of jazz fusion.
Right. Did you do any more wild styles then with the hip hop sort of vibe, like?
No.
Fair
We
enough.
kind of left that, carried on, I think, you know. But that's where I kind of, I don't know, I stopped kind of being involved in hip hop then.
Yeah.
Or buying the music even. I just got so totally into that jazz fusion, jazz dance, playing in the band, playing Latin jazz. Putting gigs on. That kind of just hip hop would come back about 4 or 5 years later when the new next generation of Tribe Called Quest and
I see, early 90s.
With the jazz. With the jazz
using those samples and stuff. Tribe used so much.
That was the acid jazz era.
Of course.
So that would be like acid jazz was a term that you could pretty much, for me, meant you could play anything.
Yeah.
Cooter, you could play Tribe Called Quest, you could play Pharoah Sanders in the same night.
Yeah,
of
course.
It was totally open-minded, and that whole jazz rap and hip-hop jazz thing, that's when I kind of came back to it.
Right, interesting. So you ended up putting stuff on there. I'm just trying to fast forward up to that point then. So
well, yeah. So Dig Family were putting nights on in the 80s, but in the acid jazz era is when we really took off. We did a night called Dig at the same place, Lower Marion Street, but it was now called the Gallery.
Okay.
So it was changed its name, big revamp, and Jip started a night called Dig. I'd step back a little bit because that was early 90s, and I had my 12-piece salsa band, which was a nightmare to organise.
I bet. Yeah. And you were running that, yeah?
So running that with Chico, was also DJing. I was also had my son was born 91, so I'm a daddy.
Nice.
You got a balance stuff, and I had a day job.
Wow, what was your day job? What did you?
Worked in Bradford Central Library as a library assistant.
Oh right.
For like,
you got some records.
mate. No,
Taking them home. Have to label these up tonight.
No, right. So we used to have record library sales where you get them chucked out for £1.
Lovely.
The guy would ring me up for the librarian and say, Lubi, we're putting these out on Saturday. Do you want to come and have a look through? Forest Silver, I'm having that. Archie Shep. You can have, 50p each, mate.
Mate.
But salary. So I kind of took a bit of a step back from 91 to about 94, just doing the band and DJing and stuff.
Remind me what the band was called. That wasn't the dreaming name.
So this by this time, I'd been through the first Latin jazz band, Sonando. A second Latin jazz band in Leeds in the late 80s called Conjunto Fuego, which is full-on instrumental Latin jazz, fast mambos. Yeah. But by the time I got to 91, there's a 12-piece salsa band called Grupo Palante meaning straight ahead.
Right.
I've been to Cuba with my wife in 1990.
Yeah.
Which is very early days.
That was an experience.
Early days. That's a whole different story.
Yeah.
And when I was there, I saw so many bands with amazing singers that I didn't want to come. I didn't want to do instrumentals anymore. I wanted to have like a salsa band with a singer or even 2 or 3 singers.
Yeah.
The way they were, I saw in Cuba how the singers connect. They're singing in Spanish. I understand a bit of Spanish, still not great, but then they would. You know, they're singing. It's like MCs.
Lots of call and
when
response.
MCs are freestyling, and you know, they pick out somebody wearing the trainers and this and that. They're doing the same thing.
Right.
God, there's Miguel with his girlfriend. Are you enjoying the room? You know, like
They're
over
talking
there.
about stuff
Hey, it's my
interesting.
brother, so and so. You know, and the way there is a lot of call and response.
Very community based like that.
Very community based. And I just came back. We started that band. That's where those pictures I posted the other day of me playing my lovely brown 1980 Fender Precision electric
You
bass.
must have been pretty good bass by that point, surely. Like
I was all right.
considering-
Listen, like I put in that post, I was an okay bass player, but I realised I was better at running bands,
Yeah.
organising gigs,
Yeah.
and DJing.
Fair enough.
And as things were sort of, as the band developed, man, 12 people. How many's in Jamatone? Like the core, 6, 7.
6 when we play live, yeah.
Right. So I had twice as many, and half were in Manchester and half were in Leeds. And,
Pain in the
mate, but
ass.
you know, it just got to a
Pre-internet.
point by '96 I was doing like a lot of gigs, like putting gigs on.
Yeah.
As a Dig family, like maybe 2 a week,
Right.
DJing twice a week, day job. No, I packed the day job in then, but I still, you know, I was a daddy still, and it just the band was taking a lot of time, so I kind of. But backtrack a little bit, Dig family. That night, Dig was huge.
Right.
Huge. The acid jazz thing just
Took
like
off.
when we did our things in the 80s and we got 80 people or 100 people, we're like, whoa, what a great night.
Yeah, of course.
You know, the first night of Dig, it was a Wednesday night. 300 people
What?
turned up.
Jeez.
Within 2 weeks, Gyp's booked Ronnie Jordan, who's like a bit of a UK jazz guitar legend now, but he was just starting out back then. And 400 people came. Within about 6 months, he's regular getting 400 or 500 people on a Wednesday night.
That's mental, isn't it?
No, but the people he was booking, mate, Carleen Anderson came through, and I think it was Carleen Anderson, and on that gig, her dad was on backing vocals, Bobby Bird from the James Brown Band.
Oh, God, right.
And
so
her
that
mum, I
brought-
think, was on Vicky Anderson. You know, it's just crazy. There was 700 people for that show.
mental.
This acid jazz thing was crazy.
Yeah.
So in the main, you had 2 rooms then in this venue, in the gallery.
Yeah.
Main room was the live band stuff, and I would be one of several DJs. I wasn't a resident, but we would play the old school Latin jazz, Brazilian music, jazz fusion, jazz funk. In the back room, we had a new young DJ called Eric Speak, DJ Ez, EZ, the original DJ Ez, not the UKG guy.
Okay.
And he was a lot younger than us, and he was just he loved jazz, but hip hop, acid jazz beats, funk breaks, and so you know that was going on in the back.
Yeah.
So you had this 2-room thing, and then that back room on a Saturday, they split the venue into 2 separate things, and in the front was the big house nights like was it Up Your Ronson and those kind of hard times, big, because that was where Leeds was in the early mid 90s.
Right.
Massive house.
Yeah.
Almost corporate house nights, but like 1,200, 1,500 people in a night.
Yeah. Big part of the culture, wasn't it? UK
And so
culture.
we had the back room, and a second night started called the Cooker on Saturday. So Dig was every Wednesday with both rooms,
Yeah.
and the Cooker was every Saturday with just the small back room, 200 people. That was very much hip hop, breaks, funk, b-boys, MCs, local MCs.
Yeah.
People
Nice.
like
Bradford locals.
Oddball, LSK, those kind of guys
Right,
coming down.
now we're talking.
Because they
yeah.
knew DJ Ez.
Right.
So they would come down freestyle and that, and the B-boys there. And
Sick.
no live bands at that one.
Right.
So Wednesdays was about live bands and DJs.
Yeah.
But, mate, those nights were packed.
Yeah.
The acid jazz thing was
Feels like
huge.
That era, a much larger part of UK culture was to be going out to gigs and stuff like that. I don't know whether you could get, even no matter how exciting the music is or how interested people are in it, I don't know whether you could pack places out quite as well.
Not
now
on a
or
Wednesday
how
night.
do you know what I
400
mean?
or 500 people on a Wednesday.
It's just crazy, isn't it? And do you think do you think people's activities have changed, like in terms of just what the average person does on a night? You know what I mean? Or is that will it ever go back to those sort of times? Do you
No,
think?
because it's pre-internet times, isn't it?
Do you think?
I mean, the sort of mid-90s, it was just. I mean, early 90s, we started getting our first mobile phones, you know, but still.
Yeah.
You could ring and text.
Yeah. You can tell someone to come to a
There was
gig.
no social media.
No.
So like, you went out. If you look at student nights from Monday, Tuesday nights back then, packed. You know,
cheap. Very cheap.
Cheap entry,
Yeah.
cheap beer. People struggle. I mean, there's only really Saturday night is a dead cert night these days. Friday even isn't. It used to be Friday, Saturdays.
Yeah.
And Thursdays was pretty good as a warm-up for the weekend.
Yeah.
And even Sundays used to be pretty good. But now,
Would you not say
it's
that?
so hard. But the acid jazz era was incredible. Like we moved from the gallery in '94 because it was getting renovated and a new venue opened, which was a 300 capacity little basement venue underneath the O2 Academy.
Okay.
It was called the Underground.
Right.
And Jip had got to know the owner. They'd been doing the place up and coming to the dig nights at the gallery.
Yeah.
Because the owner loved reggae music and soul and funk.
Yeah.
And he just loved our nights. And then he said to Jip, why don't you bring your stuff down here? It had a stage, it had a full PA, it was a gigging venue,
Dope.
had a wooden dance floor, low ceiling, 300 cap basement, and so we hopped over there. We moved there, started a completely new night in September '94 called Yardbird Suite,
Nice.
which was acid jazz. Charlie Parker.
Charlie Parker's Yardbird, yeah. Yardbird Suite.
But we had live bands, DJ sessions, we had jazz dancers, we had break dancers. It was acid jazz that night. Yardbird Suite was every Saturday, and we sold out probably every Saturday for 5 years.
Oof,
it's
lovely.
crazy.
That's beautiful. Everyone's happy.
But so then the cooker was still in the old place. But Ez was like, oh man, it's crap now. You know, I'm just a back room for a big house night. And he said, can I get me in at the Underground? So Jip brought him up. Cooker came on the Fridays at the Underground. Yeah. And that became like totally about hip hop, funk, breaks, break dancers, MC sessions, no live bands. Right. Just about the DJs, MCs.
And kind of local
so very
rappers
different.
as well, like.
No, mate. I mean, it started local, as did Yardbird Suite. I'll get onto that in a minute.
Yeah.
And then me and Chico have been doing something at a place called Cafe Mex, which is the old Wire.
Oh,
down in town.
Yeah, which is gone as well.
It's a really cool little cafe.
Yeah.
And we've been doing like a Tuesday night for a few years called Boogaloo. And it was funk and acid jazz and funk and salsa together.
Nice. Wow.
They shut for a renovation that autumn, and I was talking to Tony, the owner of the Underground. Oh, man, we shut for 4 months. He says, I've got a Thursday if you want at the Underground. You come and do your thing there. So February 5th or something, 95, we launched Casa Latina, House of Latin.
Yeah.
So you had then 3 weekly Dig family nights, Latin, hip-hop, funk, jazz, world music.
Dope.
Every night, sold out every night for 5 years.
What?
And we started off with like local bands. So my salsa band was a resident band at the salsa thing.
Yep.
But we kind of ran out of bands or ran out of tunes.
Bet you did, yeah.
I had to start booking bands from London.
Yeah.
By 96, I'm doing Cuban touring bands.
Nice.
By 98, I'm bringing bands from Cuba.
Nice.
97 or 98, I brought a 15-piece Cuban salsa band for 2 shows.
Paid the flights and the lot.
Yeah.
Bloody hell.
Well, they were coming to Europe, and I got them on the back of a mainland Europe
I see, so they're already on the way, right. But still,
we did 2 shows, and Leeds was their first ever UK show.
Yeah.
And I put them upstairs in what's the O2 Academy.
Yeah.
Like 800-900 people came. It
Amazing.
was madness. But then I started like doing tours with New York bands and bands from Colombia, making a tour that I could afford to bring them specially over. And me and 2 or 3 other guys were running like a kind of a network, like a Latin promoters network.
Yeah.
And we'd apply for funding from the Arts Council, and so that was going on. So yeah, Fridays, Jip was booking big name DJs. I mean, DJ Spinner, people like that, MCs. that hold Grand Central, Fat City, Ray and Christian crew. They had a
Legends.
residency every month there.
Really?
Every month, yeah. And they bring their own MCs, their DJs
Yeah.
from their label.
Man.
I think Mr. Scruff played there. You know,
Sick.
so that was banging.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
Saturdays, we started off with just like, you know, our bands, our mates from Leeds. But by October '94, we brought Jimmy Smith, the greatest Hammond organist of all
You
time.
got
to
Jimmy
the
Smith
venue.
through, yeah?
Mate, that
Damn.
was an unforgettable,
I've got a few of his
amazing night.
records,
But
man.
then Jimmy Smith, Mark Murphy, Brazilian jazz legends, Azimuth, Roy Ayers, Terry Callier. It was just jazz legends, as well as like all the people who were playing at the time, you know, contemporary bands.
Yeah.
One of the biggest gigs we ever did at the Yardbird Suite was, do you know Ozzy Matley?
I don't.
No.
Sorry.
So, Charlie Tuna
Oh,
and Cut Chemist from Jurassic 5
Yeah.
were also part of this like Latin music collective in LA.
No way.
Called, it was a live band,
Yeah.
but Cut Chemist did the cuts and that and scratches, and Charlie Tuna was their rapper.
Yeah.
And
But they sounded
Ozzy Matley,
sick.
mate, 98 with their first album. You've got to check it out.
I do think I
But
need to check
we,
that
we
out.
booked them. Place was sold out weeks in advance because of Cut Chemist and Charlie's
The reputation, like.
Tuna. But Cut Chemist then didn't come on the tour, but Charlie Tuna came.
Oh, sick. Yeah,
Mate,
yeah, yeah. Puts on a
It
good
was
show, doesn't he?
amazing, amazing show. One of the best shows ever. I think of all the gigs I
Wow.
put on, but it was crazy. So that was the acid jazz era. It was great, and on the back of those nights, we started getting booked all over the UK
Yeah, yeah,
as
yeah.
DJs.
Nice.
We started getting booked as Dig Family Nights.
Yeah.
So we had a regular weekly gig in Manchester. We had a regular weekly gig in Liverpool.
Yeah.
We had a regular weekly thing in Darlington at the Arts Centre. So we then got an agency. We had an office
Yeah.
because there was too much stuff to do.
Too successful.
Brought a guy in to run the office, and he was and still is Eddie Roberts from the New Master Sounds, one of the best
right.
funk bands
Yeah,
ever
yeah.
to come out of Leeds.
Wow.
Eddie and Chico ran the office. We had 2 record labels. It's crazy. We
Absolutely
putting
mental.
tours together, releasing records.
Yeah.
Like my Latin band, that post I put, the one track we ever recorded was on the compilation of our night Yardbird Suite.
Yeah.
Great times.
So the worst thing that ever happened to you, Lubi, appears to be the internet, because like you were, it was such a fertile period, the 80s and the 90s for you, for what you were putting on and what you were achieving, and the amount of sellouts and the fact you had in your own agency and stuff. Was it as simple as when things sort of went internet that it wasn't? Because obviously you're incredibly successful at what you do now.
You know,
but that level is just unmatched.
Yeah, we
innit?
started like we were getting websites sorted in '95. You know, we were
Word,
using
you were
the
on
internet.
it. You were
We
on it.
it.
Yeah, yeah, of
You know,
course.
but it was one of those, you know, your email address was blah 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 at CompuServe at blah blah blah, and it was dial up.
yeah, yeah,
it was
yeah.
dial-up.
56K shit. Yeah.
Using the phone line,
Yeah.
you know, but we were there because some of the young guys who were our mates, who were probably 18 to 21-year-old students, they were into that early sort of internet. And
Yeah.
one
fully.
guy did us a website, Nick, you know, he just like did us Yardbird Suite and Casalatina websites.
Yeah.
But that is still a good 6 years before social media exploded. When was that? MySpace?
All the MySpace
Early
era, sort of
2000s.
04, 03 sort of
Yeah,
time.
03, wasn't it? That's when
Sounds
I got
about
on it.
right. Is it?
But even then, I kind of feel it was amazing, liberating thing.
Oh, incredibly, yeah. Don't
You
get me
know,
wrong. I think it was really
you
good
know,
in lots
but
of ways.
it's just sort of like, I remember MySpace going like, what, you mean I can have like a mini website
Yeah.
for free?
Yeah.
And I can connect with all these people like across the other side of
It's
the
mental.
world.
It's crazy. Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know what happened then.
Because what I'm trying to think of is like, because you were on that curve, right?
Yeah.
And you would imagine that curve just carries on until you're like the music mogul of the world. You know what I mean? Like, where do you stop from there?
That curve. The next thing at the end of the 90s, going into the new millennium, I guess, was we should have really got a venue.
Is that your own venue sort of thing?
But like the Beatles, we split up. The Dig family.
Oh, did the Dig family split up?
2001, yeah.
It wasn't the internet. It was...
There's musical differences and some other stuff which I ain't going to go into.
That's fair.
It was a really bad split, you know. Like we split into kind of two went that way, and 2 went that way.
How many people were Dig family at the time?
The core
before
Dig
this?
family was me, Jip, Chico, and Ez.
Yeah.
And then Jip's brother John he was like a business genius.
Yeah.
Mr. Numbers.
Sounds like it.
He ran the financial side of it because we knew crap. We just said, oh, why can't we book Roy Ayers? And then followed by Jimmy Smith.
Yeah.
And then followed by Carleen Anderson. And then he said, well, you can, guys, but when we get to the end of the VAT period, how are you going to pay your VAT? So can we put a few local quartets in there, please? So it was John. But it was us 4 DJs, promoters, we fell out.
Right. Okay.
A lot of different reasons and what going to.
Fair enough.
So I finished 2001, 2002, all those nights finished. And then that's the next stage for me that's the Dig family over. What am I going to do?
Yeah.
And Jip said to me, right, well, you have to be the brand. That's where DJ Lubi, the brand, actually had to start happening.
Right, 01, 02,
Yeah.
That's when it started, man.
Yeah, 02 properly
is
when I started. I went solo, like Paul McCartney.
Yeah.
And it was hard, though. We've been a crew for 17 years.
Totally. And you had a numbers guy and all the rest of it. Like
we had everything. We had
we
had an office. We had we had labels, record labels. We had nights all over the north of England. But I had to start again, and I made a big decision. Like I was tired of putting gigs on. I thought I need to make some money. I need to just go out and play music. So that's when DJ Lubi started playing, gigging, and the salsa thing, 2002 really took off.
Yep.
So I started doing compilation albums.
Ah, I see. Yeah, because you're the king of salsa, man. You getting dropped into all sorts of situations with your salsa record collection, man. Like.
You know what? I was blessed to have got into that music in the mid 80s.
Yep.
Right. Especially even in London, it was still a new thing. But like in Leeds, there's probably 3 of us who had a Tito Puente record.
Yeah.
But so I was blessed to be ahead of the curve.
Of course.
So when the salsa dancing thing hit Leeds in mid-90s, I was already there running nights had my band.
Yeah. Hit the ground
so
running
that,
with it.
That kind of went into the 2000s. But yeah, compilations. Started doing compilation albums, getting paid as well.
Nice, paid to put them together, and
like
they got put out on CD.
£500 and it was all on CDs.
Yeah.
And I started off with budget labels like Rough Guide to Cuba and stuff like that, or
Very cool.
Beginner's Guide to Salsa, triple CD set, $5.99. But they would sell 80,000 copies, and mine is compiled by DJ Lubi, and they went all over the world.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And suddenly I'm getting asked to go and DJ salsa.
Yep.
Across the EU.
Love it.
And because we had a free movement of people, I jump on a plane in Leeds and go play in Latvia
no
for
problem
the weekend.
at all. Yeah. And not have to worry about all the tax things and going into getting a visa
no visas,
and all that.
No tax things.
Yeah.
It was
Cheers,
CDs.
Brexit.
I didn't take my vinyl then because it was all CDs.
It's a lot.
Just like a shoulder bag of CDs.
Yeah, it makes more sense. Yeah.
Little overnight bag.
Nice, perfect.
So I think from about 2002 to 2008, I put some salsa gigs on because I was in that scene, but I didn't do the jazz, the soul, the funk, hip hop, and all that.
Yeah.
And I'm just loved it. It's good times.
Very cool.
I mean, mate, I went to Singapore Salsa Festival. I went to Turkey loads of times. I went to Gran Canaria, DJed at the WOMAD Festival.
Yeah.
Saturday night. After the last band played the last hour, closed the Saturday night down to 7,000 people in the town square.
Yeah, man.
I'm scary.
That's dope, man. So sick.
Scary,
stuff,
but
man.
I went to Los Angeles Salsa Congress. Just great. And
Just
then
the go-to guy.
a mate of mine in London that worked for Blue Note was called Dean Rudland. Was a great compiler of jazz and funk and soul. Works for Ace Records now.
Yeah.
He suddenly got a job with the new Reform Fania Records. They relaunched in 2006, and he just said, "Lubi, do you want to come on board and do some compilations?" Fania Records is like the Blue Note Records of Latin music. You know, so what Blue Note is to jazz, say Trojan to reggae, Tamla Motown to soul, Fania Records is to Latin music.
Yeah,
My first few Latin records in 1982 were on Fania Records, and I'm pinching myself. What? So yeah, I did about 10 for them.
Sick.
And then you're on Fania, DJ Lubi compiled NYC Salsa, and so I'm getting more international gigs. So, but come to the end of that first decade of the new millennium, I was missing funk, soul, jazz.
I was going to say, so
I
the
was
first
missing
time,
it a little bit.
So this is interesting. This is kind of where our stories overlap a little bit, because it was about 2009, 10 when I probably first heard about you. I think Tony was putting me. So Tony Green, which is a mutual friend of ours, an amazing lad.
Great.
He's already been on the podcast.
Love him.
He put me on one of our first ever gigs in like 07, 08, and I think you. So maybe you, I'm trying to think whether you had some nights already going on at a wardrobe or not. So you sort of had returned
so
back.
2008, I started doing some little nights. Jip hooked me up with some guys in Headingley. I think it's the place is called Head of Steam now, but it was called Citrus. And they wanted a Sunday jazz, soul, funk, little Sunday session.
Sure.
And so Jip hooked me up with them, and they said, look, we'll give you a budget, I don't know, 250 quid, like, for you to book as a band, take a bit for yourself, DJ and host it. So I started doing a thing called Sunday Sermon, and that got me back into like doing a live music thing. And then after about 6-8 months, they stopped that, and then I went to a place in 2009 to still do the Sundays called Musicarium.
I know it,
which is
sort
of Armley, isn't it?
Yeah,
Kirk's still up to
weirdly
Armley.
in the way, middle of nowhere.
And we carried on there for another year.
Nice.
But in 2009, the owner of the wardrobe, I've forgotten his name now, Paul something or other, and he wanted to sort of, they'd shut the basement of the wardrobe. I mean, I'd been there with the Dig family 99 to 2001 and then kind of left, and they carried on doing stuff, but they'd shut it, whilst that, the economic recession, 2008, 9, they'd had to shut it, just have the bar open.
God, right.
So he said, I want to reopen it. Do you want to do something like funk, soul, and salsa? So I went back there and we did a thing called Spanish Harlem on Saturdays, which was like the old Dig family nights. Funk, soul, bit of Latin, bit of old school reggae, bit of classic hip hop. And we started putting bands on, and it's there that I did one of my biggest hip hop gigs, Grandmaster Melly Mel and the Furious Five and Curtis Blow.
Dope,
the Legends of Hip Hop Tour,
nice.
2009.
Very nice.
Sold out.
Of course it did.
Amazing.
Amazing.
Local I can't remember who DJed. It might even have been Tony. Breakdancers. It's just like, so I was back there in 2009. Putting on the Haggis horns, the new Master Sounds.
Yeah, remember you championing Haggis horns just before they got big with all the stuff they did with Mark Ronson and stuff like.
Well, it was about that time.
Was it around then?
Oh, that was a bit earlier actually, but they'd been on the Amy Winehouse.
The
stuff he did with
Mark Ronson
and they were
stuff,
Mark Ronson, Amy's the horns anyway were her horn section.
That's right,
Glastonbury and places.
Crazy.
So that got me back into the wardrobe, but then. So I was back doing gigs and that there, but then 2012 was when the Mighty Soul Rebels began.
Soul Rebels is 2012 then,
2012.
so you've been doing that 13 years strong.
So the reason that happened is I turned 50 that year in the summer, and I did a party, and I just wanted to get all my family, my friends, my old school friends, all these young musicians I now was meeting with these new nights I was doing. And so I had Haggis Horns headlining, Tabo and the Real Deal. You know Tabo from Extracurricular?
I know of Tabo. I've met him a couple of times,
Tabo's band opened, and someone in the middle might have been Nubian Twist.
No doubt.
As a student band.
Mental.
And that night was my birthday party and my 30th anniversary in the game kind of thing as a jazz man. And it went so well.
Of course.
Loved it. The vibe, everybody there for the music, people our age, 50 plus, and then... people of 18 to 21, no one giving a toss.
Just having
what
a good
trainers
day.
you're wearing or what you're wearing or what you look like. Everyone just vibing to the music.
Defo,
and I just thought on that night, I want to do this like regular.
Yeah.
Just maybe once every 1 or 2 months. And this is where I'm going to curate this night. I'm going to put the live bands on. I'm going to DJ what I want to DJ.
Yeah.
And that's how Soul Rebels began.
I met you. I was lucky enough to be put on twice for you, and I bet that were quite early on because I think you put
2013.
I think you put Flame Griller on in
Flame
2013.
Griller and then Tough Crowd
later after. Yeah, because
Flame Griller was great, but Tough Crowd were my boys.
I love that, mate.
Live hip hop.
We played with the Renegade Brass Band. I think was one of them, and I can't remember the other one.
Yes.
Back once again with the Renegade Brass Band,
because it was like the Roots, but you're all white dudes from Yorkshire.
Yeah. We had a double bassist and that. It was a good do.
It was amazing.
It was sick, and they were good musicians as well. In fact, the keys player is the guitarist in Nubian Twist, Luke Winter, and roll the trio and stuff. So we had some really good musicians with us.
But yeah, so that was Soul Rebels, and God, that's 2012, man. It wasn't a jazz thing, right? It was hip hop, jazz, as you know, Afrobeat. Yep. So the strapline, it said Soul Rebels from Fella to Dilla and beyond.
Nice. ...
That's
cool.
So as you know, because you came down and you played and you performed, and like, you know, we would play Pharaoh Sanders' tune, but we would play like Jurassic 5.
Yeah.
We would play Mos Def.
Yeah.
Or we would play like, James Brown. I mean, there was a point where a load of breakers were starting to come down.
Yep.
But it went quite, I'd say about 2013, 14, Renegade Brass Band, Abstract Orchestra, you know, and they were becoming a part of the night. Yeah. People were coming, did you see those breakers? You know, and of course we had social media by then. People were videoing and posting
sharing
stuff.
The vibes.
So it was, Soul Rebels was a vibe, man. Like the first 3 years, I reckon no one was doing anything like that in Leeds. Like triple bills.
Caring that much about the music as you did, though, that was the thing. It always felt like every gig had to be like carefully curated.
It was madly curated. Right, I don't know if you remember the hand illustrated designs of Fella and Questlove. Like my designer illustrated the
flyer.
Mongo Santa Maria, Erica Badu. He didn't just get a program
and slap it on
Photoshop or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Every night was curated. Some nights was a flop, man. You know, I pushed it out too far.
Yeah,
it was a band that wasn't. They were too early in their career.
Yeah, to fully get on.
But you know, that night, I kind of feel like, you know, when 2015-16 happened and Yusuf Kamal Trio came through, and but like before that, before I managed to book them, that was the year it started to kind of, that UK jazz thing really blew up.
Right. Yeah. So everyone was interested in that.
I mean that year, 2015 to 16, you had Kamasi Washington's first album.
Yeah.
The Epic was huge. And then all those musicians ended up on Kendrick Lamar's To Pimp a Butterfly.
Oh, I see, yeah.
You know, like the heavy jazz influences on there.
Yeah.
So that blew up.
Yeah.
And then here you had that Black Focus, that album, the Yusuf Kamal Trio. That I think was a
huge album for UK
huge
jazz,
album.
yeah.
And that's when I was trying to get them.
Yeah.
I'd already booked Yusuf Days in his previous band a couple of years before, United Vibrations. This is how weird it is. Like, that was at the Hedgerow House.
Yeah.
There's 80 people there. Lost a shed load.
Of course, yeah.
But it was one of the best gigs I've ever put on.
Yeah,
I've been trying to get them for a few years. I used to play like Hi-Fi Club Sunday joint sessions, but I finally got them like within 2 years. Yusuf Kamal Trio, I put them on at the at Belgrave.
That's right. I was there.
Belgrave sold out like weeks in advance. They were, you know, and there's maybe even less than 2 years from that United Vibrations gig.
Yeah.
But it blew up.
You did, yeah.
And so that year in 2017, I put on Ezra Collective's first lead show, Yusuf Kamal Trio's last ever show, because they broke up after my gig.
Yeah.
Don't know, was it something I said?
Yeah, it was really soon after that.
No, it was literally. They were arguing really outside
moody.
The session.
They seemed really moody on stage. Remember the keys player
something wasn't right, was it? But anyway, so that year I brought Coco Roco to Leeds for the first time. I think that year, or it might have been the year before, me and Nathan, I'd started to do stuff here 2015, as well as the Wardrobe, as well as using Hi-Fi Club and Belgrave. I used a lot of venues then. Soul Rebels was branded, was taking it. You can't always get the venue you want for the artist you want, because they're touring and they have a touring schedule. Yeah, no, right, we're going to be in the North
Tuesday,
this week.
Wednesday. Yeah, so you can get us in
or the week that they want. the Saturday's not free. So I started to take some of the gigs as standalone Soul Rebels gigs.
Yeah.
But in 2016, we did Thundercat here on that stage.
Oh, yeah, nice.
Insane.
Nice.
Sold out
16,
weeks
I bet that was crazy.
But Thundercat, you'll never see Thundercat in
a
a
stage
in a
as small
400
as
cap.
that again. No way.
It's insane. It's amazing. But started to do stuff like that.
You've always had one eye on the larger stuff, so yeah, bringing people like Thundercat and Yusuf Kamal through and what have you. But also, you always seem really plugged into the Leeds College of Music scene. So you worked sort of seemingly tirelessly to kind of try and get young LCM and conservatoire kids who have like got bands together through. I remember you put on a few. There was one called Pay back in the day, I remember as well, and obviously Nubian Twist are kind of out of that and stuff.
Nubian Twist. So that Leeds College of Music, as it was called, my connection to that place goes back to the mid-'80s.
Right.
When I had my Latin jazz band,
Yeah.
once we started playing in Leeds, we started to get horn players and
that,
drummers
yeah.
from there.
Yeah,
And our keyboard player came from there. And suddenly,
Dope.
so my connection goes through being a musician, getting some great young musicians in our bands,
Yeah.
to the 90s, still being a musician. But then by the end of the 90s, I stopped playing, but I was still booking bands. The Haggis Horns were all, they
They're
were
all
Leeds
LCM dudes, yeah.
College of Music guys, New Master Sounds.
Right.
Home Cup.
Yeah, Testament, yeah. He's
No, I don't know if he was actually from there, but I think all his band were from there.
A lot of them were.
Corinne
yeah.
Bailey Ray didn't go there, but all her band
Did.
at Elcon.
Yeah, it's an absolute hive of activity
And
and
so-
talent, isn't it? Like,
So yeah, that's one reason I did Soul Rebels, because when I got back into the live stuff, 2009, 10,
yep,
I started to meet a whole generation of young players
yep,
that were at Leeds that were coming to my nights and asking for gigs.
yeah.
So Nubian Twist are the biggest ones. Like, I think I put their first gig on, or
Yeah.
I was involved in their first gig. I put their first headline on in 2011 in Leeds, in Musicarium.
That's right. And now they're incredibly
But also, like you mentioned, Luke Winter, Roller Trio, they were
Yeah.
flying, man.
They were
2000.
killing
There was
it, yeah,
another
yeah.
band called Paper Tiger at the time.
They were cool. Didn't you put Dominic J. Marshall on at one point? I'm sure he was an LCM kid, and he's massive in the
He
game
might
now.
have, yeah, we did trio. I think, but I just met all these young musicians that were like us when we were 18 to 21.
Yeah.
Seriously, reminded me of me.
Yeah.
But they were buzzing because they weren't just into funk and soul.
Yeah.
So like they said, yeah, we like Herbie Hancock and we like that old school stuff, but we like Robert Glasper.
Yeah,
and
fair.
we like electronic music like Flying Lotus.
Yeah.
But we love Afrobeat as well. So they were
Trying
not
to
only
mix a
were
bit
they
of everything.
great musicians and they had great bands,
Yep.
they used to come to my nights to watch the other bands.
That's sick.
So that's how I met a lot of them.
Yep.
Their mates were playing and they came, oh, I've got a band.
Yep.
Give me the link, or I don't think we did CDs then, but like, it's our MySpace page or Facebook or something.
Yeah.
But then I just started to realise as Soul Rebels was going on, I can't do Thundercat or whatever, Yusuf Kamal Trio or Ezra Collective every week.
No, it's got to be a bit of something local.
But
and-
also then why not? And the way Nubian Twist were going, Nubian Twist were just a local Leeds College of Music act
Yeah.
by 2017, man. So they're the kind of future stars of tomorrow.
Yeah.
Got to
And if you
start
spot them
somewhere.
on the way in, that's it. You give me the guy who gives them that platform to start with. And I feel like you've been responsible for giving so many bands like that their first platform. And maybe it didn't come together for them, but I think you sort of establish how good they are and then go, right, well, they need a platform, need to put them on and give them every opportunity you can.
Soul Rebels, I think by 2017, 18, so a lot of people were booking a lot of stuff I was booking, like the big stuff, because Ezra Collective and Nubian Twist and people,
Monsters.
they've gone massive. Yusuf days, Nabai Garcia, I never managed to book her actually because she just blew up so fast.
Yeah.
But that whole UK jazz thing was blowing up so big, and I thought, you know what, I can't compete with these big guys in Leeds, the big promoters
Yeah.
and the venues.
Really?
They've got like budgets galore.
Yeah, big money
So
to
if
throw
I
at it.
offer, £1,500, £2,000 for one of those big name bands, they just
They don't wanna know.
knock me out $3,000. You know what I'm saying? It's
Yeah.
just that's the way it is. It's just a free market,
Yeah, fair
So
enough.
I kind of started really concentrating on our bands.
But what you do is more exciting because any dickhead can book someone who's going to sell out. Do you know what I mean?
You're
Like
right.
we can all get Robbie Williams in at the academy and he's going to sell out or whatever. But we can all do it. You know what I mean, though. But what you're doing is you're in the dirt trying to find the diamonds. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And putting risking your own money for it, but like a great
Tell me about
reward,
it.
man. Like,
Tell me about it. That's why my beard is white, you know, and I have no hair.
beard's white because you're in your 60s, bro.
No, the beard was going white at 30, mate.
Oh, fair play.
And my hair was falling out.
Because you're risking it all for good
flipping
music.
jazz
good music.
promoting.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I kind of like being at that grassroots level.
Word.
It is cool when you see a young player and you think, whoa, they are good.
Yeah.
And you say, do you want to do, I would have 3 bands at Sorrow, but do you want to do the first half hour at, 9 o'clock?
Yeah,
when
yeah.
There's 40 people in. The wardrobe, I'd love
What
to
an
do that,
opportunity.
And then they smash it to bring their mates down.
Yeah.
Like there's 40 of their mates there, and you think, okay, bump them up the bill 6 months later.
4 years later in
Or
Jazz
then a year after you've met them, I said, do you want to do a headline show at Hyde Park Book Club? You know, you can pull 150 people now. And then the next step is here.
Yeah.
You know, and I've done so many bands through that kind of Lubi Finishing School kind of thing. But
And it must be so appreciated,
it's
man.
cool. It's cool. It's, I enjoy it. I think it is more enjoyable for me, job satisfaction.
Good.
Yeah, I'm kind of a little bit proud. I feel like I'm,
Should
when you're school teacher and all your kids got good grades at GCSE.
Yep.
It kind of feels like that.
Yeah.
And just imagine how it feels when you see Newbie and Twist on later
With Jules.
Holland, and
Yeah.
you go, "Oh
you
man,
go,
I'm
put
so
that-
happy for you."
Yeah. And
know-
you took one of their first risks with them, man.
But it's not only that. It's like when you have those relationships. I mean, I'm still good mates with the Twisters, KOG as well, people like that.
Yeah.
TC and the Groove family, all that crowd, Plant Food, but they're nice people.
Yeah.
Like and you meet them in the Brudenell in the bar there, and you sit down and have a
Chilling,
chat.
have a chat.
So
Love
I
it.
like that.
That's good. When I think about you, man, I do think about like the guy who gave so many opportunities, like to myself as well, like musically, and that's one of the reasons I was like so desperate to get on the podcast, because it's like not a lot of promoters follow that route of like, as you say, have a finishing school, have a level for each one of them, and like it seems like you've always got a good idea for a musician and you can plug them in some way.
Well, the other thing is, I think it's just because I love music. Because music's my life, like I said, from that
100%.
punk rock thing, music became my life. But
Yep.
also, I've got the other parts that I can help bands with. So I do my music, DJ Lubi music promo, stuff to radio.
Yep.
So, I can offer that. Look, come and play some gigs for me, and then quite often they say, "Oh, we're going to put a single out. What do you think?" They'll send me it, like rough mix or something, and that's really good. What are you going to do with it? Well, I don't know. We're just going to put it out, on Spotify or something. I'm like, well, you're going to like get it to any pit. Well, who should we send it to? I said, look, and that's where I get paid for it.
Yeah, of course.
I say, look,
you've got some good
you
contact.
need to
man.
master that a little bit better.
Yeah.
Right. And send me a WAV. Give me a good photo. Give me the artwork.
Yeah.
Give me the you get the emails anyway, but
the
promo
and it's
emails
something
and
I need to
MailChimp.
take advantage of. We were very close to doing it with the Jamatoni single a few months ago. Then
We were, weren't we? Yeah.
Different things happened, but I will definitely be using you for that because I think you're such a wealth of contact.
Some young musicians like Nova Soul is a hot, heavy band now, kind of breakbeat jazz.
Yeah.
Like broken beats and jazz. 2 sick horn players, bass player, keys. But I got their music onto like BBC Radio 3, Jazz FM
Sick.
places, and so I
Amazing.
can do that.
Yeah. If the music's
Well,
right.
it's part of it. It's part of what I do.
Yeah.
And I sit down with people. Like I'm a kind of friendly person,
Very much so.
not snooty.
Not at all.
But if some young rapper or I remember I sit down with them all, man.
yeah.
Yusuf Yellow. Yusuf,
Yeah.
Lubes, can we have a coffee? Vinyl. What do you call it? That place in Headingley, the vinyl records.
A vinyl whistle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right there, just have a coffee, have a chat. Thinking of doing this, showing me stuff on their phones. I don't mind.
I think
If I've
great,
got the
man.
time.
Yeah, of course.
Sometimes I'm mad busy.
Of
but
course you are,
if
bro.
I've got
Yeah,
the
yeah.
time, and I think there's something really good in this music. There's some really talented musicians here, and they're writing original tunes. That's the cool thing.
That's why you get so excited.
I'm not fussed about the whole, funk soul covers scene.
Yeah.
That people do that to make money.
Of
It's
course.
like I had a day job. That's
Yeah,
a day
get it.
job.
But
But
yeah,
when they're writing original material,
that's when it's exciting.
and
isn't
it's really exciting and
it?
good.
Bro, I agree
Then
with you so much.
I drop
man.
it, I drop a track to Giles Peterson and like he plays it, and I'm like, oh, that's pretty good. And they're like, wow. You know, so it's cool. I mean, also, I am hugely proud of our Leeds jazz and jazz plus scene. I don't just mean jazz. I mean, like I said, hip hop,
Bits of
folk,
everything.
soul,
Yep.
Latin, African, you know, whatever, world music. I'm really proud of what we do here and what we've done for decades. You know, I think we're really lucky we've had Leeds College Music here since 1965.
Really helps,
You know, but now it's not just the conservatoire. You know, you've got like the University of Leeds Music Department brings a lot of people. You've got Leeds Arts University as a music department.
Yeah.
All these young people coming every year with ideas and like, you know, want to play.
Yeah, and nearly all of them have to go through you at some point.
Well,
and not even
no.
in a gatekeepery way, just they'll get put on their opportunity everywhere.
Come on, no. I think in the sense that I've always said I get the freaky ones.
Fair.
No, look, if you're into Afrobeat,
Yeah.
if you're into Latin music, if you're into like, you know, laid
Something
back,
with a bit
sort
of
of
soul.
lo-fi hip-hop, neo-soul,
Yeah,
and that kind of dance floor jazz vibes, you'll
you're the guy.
meet me at some point.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
You'll come to a gig.
Yeah.
Or you'll come and ask me for a gig. So,
Bro, I'll just turn up to random gigs and you'll, oh yeah, of course you put this on. It happened the other day with a piano concert, didn't it?
that was
Here
it.
he is.
Yeah. We no, it's cool, but I'm really proud. Yeah, I'm proud. It's kind of this Leeds has this independent spirit. Don't matter what music you're into, hip hop or rock or whatever. We've had this independent kind of DIY vibe.
Yeah, get it.
You know, I mean, from when I got into punk, Leeds was already like had bands like the Gang of Four and the Mekons and the Delta 5, and you know there were promoters like John Keenan was putting all the punk bands on.
Yep.
And there was this independent spirit, you know, and this real DIY. Like, yeah, London's cool, but you know, I'm not going to wait for them.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
This is the
Build
next
it myself.
big thing. Just
Build
do
it myself. Yeah.
And I think we do that really well. Even now, you know, like look at the venues like, you know, Hyde Park Book Club.
Yeah, which you've got a lot of dealings with now. So
Very
you've kind
independent.
you've almost got like, that's almost like your feeder venue to like
Well,
when you get
that
your
was
big
what I
stuff
decided to do. I started to put some smaller gigs in there when it opened.
Yeah.
Over the years, the sound's got better, the stage, everything, the downstairs is great. It's the right size venue. My view is this: if you can't sell 150 tickets, there's no point really putting you in here.
Fair.
Or in the other room or you know, Belgrave or somewhere.
Yep.
But if you can sell 100 tickets, you
worth
know,
it in
I'll
there.
put you in there because that's jammed. And then if you can sell 150 next time,
Yep.
and then we'll come up here and do the EP launch.
Yeah,
so
or what
that's
have
the
you.
way it sort of works. But it's a great place. I mean, you know, Jack's done a great thing there, and he's brought in a lot of very talented people, and he's let people he lets them do what they do.
Yeah,
Gives
yeah,
them
exactly. And
artistic
there's not a
freedom and
lot of,
stuff.
and there is a decreasing amount of small venues that, you know, original music can play in, because not everyone's going to fill 100 out or whatever, but people need to be out there and be discovered, even if there's 30 people.
Well,
in
the
room,
beautiful
like.
thing, I think this is why Leeds has always been good from when I've been doing gigs, is we've always had these small feeder, like the
Feeder
first
venues.
level venues.
Word. Yeah.
You know, I mean, if you look now, you've got Hyde Park Book Club, you've got Wharf Chambers. It's not huge. It's all right for sort of
Decent, though.
first gig. Lending Rooms,
Yeah.
the libraries, that's about 180.
Yeah.
Hedgerow House is about 180. But the smaller places than that, you know, I mean, there's a new one opened last 6 months called The Attic,
All right.
which is the old Sheaf Street Studios down by the Old Tetley Brewery.
Yeah.
That's going to be a great place.
That'll be
I've
a
got
good
a gig
spot.
there next Wednesday.
Of course you have. Of course you have.
But mate, they've got an acoustic grand piano there, and it's a
Sick.
good one.
Is it a bass, yeah?
You know, so like, I want to start doing some more jazz
Bits and
acoustic
pieces
stuff.
like that. Yeah.
So yeah, we've always had these small feeder venues. We've always had pubs. We've always had like the Pack Horse and places like
Yeah,
that.
took upstairs at the Pack Horse, still a great venue for a beat night.
You know,
Pairside,
for like 100 cap places, and I think they've always been accessible. Like you can, as a grassroots promoter, you can hire them. They're not too expensive. As a band,
Yeah.
a lot of bands put their own gigs on now.
Yeah, they do.
I mean,
Have
you
to,
know, they
yeah,
don't
put
even
your own
need to.
event.
Don't even need to a promoter like me anymore.
No, well, that's not true. That's not true. But I know what you're saying. Yeah,
No,
a lot of
but
people
they
DIY
can,
with
and
it.
I kind of, you know, I like it. It's good.
Yeah.
Because then they know how hard it is to put a damn
Do you
gig
know what
on.
I mean? Yeah.
Well, whinging at me that the rider's not what they. There's bass amp in the back line. It's buzzing. Anyway.
Mate, Lubi, I feel like we've done the whole from the 1960s to present. And it's been an honour, man. Honestly, it's been so great to have you on at the Brudenell Social Club. I appreciate it so much. You're a legend. Thanks for everything you do for the scene.
Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Big up. That was DJ Lubi to close out this series of the WYcast. Really hope you enjoyed listening to that. Go and support any of DJ Lubi's artists that he's promoting or the gigs that he's putting on as well. I mean, people like him are so important, and I know that with the demise of, well, just the economy the way it is and the luxury industry like it is, he's kind of dropping off from putting on grassrootsy stuff because it just can't pay him enough to do it. Without dudes like Lubi supporting that, it's going to get really sticky. So please go and support as many grassroots events as you can, including the ones that DJ Lubi puts on, if he continues to do so. And until next time, and until next series, big up!